Congratulations on your purchase of a Laguna by David Frank, the luxury swing company. Once you unpack the box, we recommend you lay out all the parts to make sure you have everything. Go over the list. Make sure you aren't missing any of these parts. A package with all the hardware you will need is included as well. The tools you will use are shown here. It is extremely important to make sure you have the correct size bits, sockets, and Allen keys. We recommend using an impact driver as well as having a ladder, box cutters, or scissors, and cutters for the spline. Before you begin, take a minute to make sure you have everything listed. For step 1, you will need the legs, bottom posts, and bottom post braces, as well as your impact driver with a 3/4 inch socket bit. Make sure you only use the hardware labeled Step Number 1, shown here. To begin, start with a leg and a bottom post. Turn the leg upside down and place the bottom post on top, making sure the bolts go all the way through the holes. Take the bottom brace and slide it over the bolts. Once you have hand tightened each bolt, use your impact driver and 3/4 inch socket to finish up. Repeat the same steps for the opposite side. Once you are finished, turn both legs right side up. For step 2, you will need the crossbar as well as your impact driver with a 3/4 inch socket bit and a ratchet with a 5/16 Allen key socket. Make sure you only use the hardware labeled Step Number 2, shown here. First, you will need to take 2 bolts and slide them through the holes on the leg. Now slide the bolts through the crossbar. Place a washer on each bolt and a dab of anti-seize, then hand tighten bolt. Repeat the same steps for the opposite side. Do not tighten with impact driver yet. You will do that after we finish step number 4. For step 3, you will need both top posts, the center supports, and all 4 cup holder pieces, as well as your impact driver and a 5/16 Allen key socket. Make sure you only use the hardware labeled Step Number 3, shown here. Start with either side. Take one of the center supports and slide it in the bottom post. Do not let go of it. Place 2 bolts with washer through the bottom hole as far as it will go. Repeat for the opposite side. Now use your impact driver and 5/16 Allen key to drive bolts all the way through center supports and bottom post. Next, take the top posts and slide them over center supports. Use the impact driver and 5/16 Allen key to drive bolts through the center support and top post. Repeat for the opposite side. Once you have the top posts on, you can place the cup holder pieces over the bolts. Add the washers, then add a dab of anti-seize to the bolt. Now you can put the nuts on the bolts, making sure to hand tighten only. Again, we will come back after step number 4 to tighten with impact driver. For step 4, you will need the other crossbar, as well as your impact driver with a 3/4 inch socket and a ratchet with a 5/16 Allen key socket. Make sure you only use the hardware labeled Step Number 4, shown here. Take the crossbar and line up the holes with the top of the posts. Place a bolt with washer through one of the holes. Hold the crossbar steady while doing so. On the other side, place the bolt through the opposite hole you placed the first bolt in. This will allow the crossbar to stay stable while you place the last 2 bolts through the holes. Don't forget to add anti-seize. Then hand tighten each bolt. Now take your impact driver with a 3/4 inch socket and your ratchet with a 5/16 Allen key and tighten all the bolts. Make sure to go back and tighten the bolts from steps 1 through 4 using the ratchet to hold the bolts and the impact driver to tighten. For step 5, you will need all 4 canopy rails, both canopy leader bars and the canopy fabric, as well as your impact driver with a 5/32 Allen key bit. You will also need the leader bar sliders from this package. And make sure you only use the hardware labeled step number 5, shown here. Take one canopy bar with a rod and one without and place them together. When placing on top of posts, make sure the notch is on the bottom facing upwards, like so. Holding the canopy bars together, center them on top of the posts. Using your impact driver and 5/32 Allen key bit, drill all 4 screws through the canopy bars into the top posts as shown here, making sure the canopy bars are flush against each other. Be careful not to over-tighten and bend the metal. Repeat for the opposite side. Again, make sure the notch is on the bottom facing upwards, like so. Now you are ready for the fabric. Before you place the fabric, take every leader slide and flip them like so. This will help the fabric slides go into the notch on the canopy rails. Once you have 1 or 2 leads into place, start on the opposite side of the fabric. This will make sure the fabric doesn't bunch up. Work your way back and forth until all the leads are in the canopy rail. Once all the leads are in, you can pull the fabric across the canopy rails into place. Before you place the lead bar, you will need to gently tap in the sliders with your mallet. Make sure they are both facing in the same direction. Once the sliders are attached, take your bar and slide it through the fabric. Make sure the sliders are facing forward so they slide into the notch on the canopy rails. After the slider bar is in place, push it forward a few feet so you have slack on the back end. Repeat for the back side of fabric, but this time do not slide the bar forward. Make sure it locks into the notches on the canopy rails. Now, pull the front slider bar back until it locks into place inside the front notches. For step 6, you will need both seat supports, they are shaped like a giant C, as well as your impact driver with a 7/32 Allen key bit. Make sure you only use the hardware labeled step number 6, shown here. Inside each end of the seat support bars are plastic sleeves. Make sure to remove all 4 from both supports before moving forward. Take the plastic sleeve and slide it over the top of the hinge, like so. Place the seat support on the plastic insert. Using your impact driver and 7/32 Allen key bit, drill the bolt through seat support and the hinge. Repeat for the opposite side. Hand tighten the bolts on each side. For steps 7 and 8, you will need the 3 large spreader bars, both seat bars and the seat fabric, as well as your impact driver with a 9/16 socket and a rubber mallet. Make sure you only use the hardware labeled step number 7 and step number 8, shown here. Remember the plastic sleeves from the seat supports? You are going to need those now. Take the plastic sleeve and place it over the seat support like so. Once you have the sleeve on properly, insert the seat bar into the seat support bar. Repeat for the opposite side. Before placing any screws on these next steps, you will want to make sure to apply anti-seize lubricant. This ensures none of the bolts seize up in case you ever want to change the fabric. Now take the 6-inch bolts with the black spacers from your hardware package labeled number 7. Make sure you add a dab of anti-seize lubricant and use your impact driver with 9/16 socket To drive the bolt through the seat support bar and the seat bar, place the black spacer aside. You will need it for step number 9. Repeat for the opposite side. Use your rubber mallet to pound them all the way through. Now take your fabric and line up the spline with the groove in the bar and slide it into it. Repeat for opposite side. Now pull the fabric back until the edge lines up with the seat. Make sure it is even and all 4 corners are the same. Before placing any screws on the spreader bars, you will want to make sure you apply anti-seize lubricant. Again, this ensures none of the bolts seize up in case you ever want to change the fabric. Take each spreader bar and slide the bolts labeled step number 8 in the hardware packet through the hole in the spreader bar and the seat, repeating for each bar. Make sure to place the nut on the first couple threads. Do not hand tighten all the way. Repeat for the opposite side, making sure to only place the nut on the first couple threads. Using your impact driver with the 9/16 socket and a ratchet with the 7/32 Allen key, tighten all the nuts onto the bolts. Make sure to use the Allen key to secure the bolt, while using the driver to tighten the nuts. If done correctly, the spreader bars will go flush against the seat. For step 9, you will need the 2 backrest spreader bars, both backrest bars, the backrest fabric and pillow, as well as your impact driver with the 9/16 socket and your ratchet with the 7/32 Allen key bit. Make sure you only use the hardware in labeled step number 9, shown here. Before putting the backrest bar on, you will need the black spacer from step number 7. Place the spacer into the 6-inch bolt, then place the backrest bar, then a washer. Do not tighten. Place the nut on the first few threads only. The backrest has a U-shaped connector. Make sure that faces out. Repeat for the opposite side. Once you have the backrest bars in place, slide the backrest fabric into the grooves the same way you did with the seat fabric. Slide the fabric into place and lean backrest bars back. Before placing any screws on the backrest spreader bars, you will want to make sure to apply anti-seize lubricant, just like before. This ensures none of the bolts seize up in case you ever want to change the fabric. Attach the last 2 spreader bars the same way we did on the seat, using the bolts from step number 9. You may have to wiggle the bars a little to get the bolts through. Once through, make sure to only screw on to the first few threads. Now you can tighten everything using your impact driver with a 9/16 socket and ratchet with the 7/32 Allen key bit. For step 10, you will need the backrest ratchet, as well as your impact driver with a 5/32 socket and your ratchet with the 7/16 Allen key bit. Make sure you only use the hardware labeled step number 10, shown here. Attach the backrest ratchet to the U-shaped connectors on the back of the backrest bars, with the ratchet facing in. Place the bolts from your hardware pack in the box labeled step number 10 through the holes. Using your impact driver and the 5/32 socket and your ratchet with the 7/16 Allen key bit, tighten the nuts to the bolts. For step number 11, you will need the 2 support rods as well as your impact driver with the 7/32 Allen key bit. Make sure you only use the hardware labeled step number 11, shown here. Using your impact driver and 7/32 Allen key bit, drive the bolts through the last 2 holes on the seat support into the support rods. Repeat for the opposite side. Now you can attach the pillow using the Velcro straps to the top backrest spreader bar. Adjust for comfort. Last step is just to add the end caps. Using your rubber mallet, tap the end caps into place. Now you are ready to enjoy your new Laguna Swing.